So I wanted to give you my top tips on how to go out and do a wild camp in Epping Forest. Number one is just do it. It's actually really difficult to pull the trigger and get out there, to go through the process of making the arrangements, packing up all of your stuff, making your way there, and doing the whole thing, whilst at the same time having all the allure of not doing anything. I could have just stayed at home playing on the Xbox or doing something stupid. I'm actually really proud of myself for getting out and doing it. I feel great. I feel much, much better than I have done for a number of days. So in the words of a wise old prophet,
just do it!
You won't regret it. Tip 2 is simplify your packing process. Now, what I mean by this is, having formed the intention to go camping, I then had to pack all of my gear, and I found it quite challenging. I knew broadly what I wanted to take with me, but when you actually get into the detail of the packing and things just keep on building and building, and you keep remembering something that you want, or there's something else that you think you might need, it can get really difficult. Now, this is something that I'm suggesting as a tip, but actually I need to do some work making sure I understand it and follow through with it myself. But what I've been thinking about on the way here and subsequently is that the use of systems is probably where it's at. If I boil my kit down to a number of core systems, it will help me personally not be jumping backwards and forwards trying to think of everything that I need for this camping trip and fearing that I've forgotten something because I'm trying to hold all of that gear in my mind at one time. I think they might help. I'll get back to you on that one. Tip number 3 is how to actually pick a wild camping site. There is no doubt lots of theory behind how best to choose a campsite. I've actually watched videos about this and I've forgotten most of the information. The other thing is that a lot of the stuff that you actually learn by experience. So for instance, with the Helm 2, I now know that the way the blue pole goes is actually the way my body is going to lie when I'm sleeping. Probably could have extrapolated that, but I didn't. So I need to make sure that when I set this thing up, if I'm on a slight incline, which I am right here, I need to make sure that that blue line follows the slope so that my head is at the top, because otherwise you're always feeling like you're going to roll to one side. But anyway, in terms of choosing an actual site, so I use Google Maps to try and find a location that is far away from roads or other features, and I head for there. I'm initially looking for somewhere which is set off of any kind of tracks, so I'm looking for kind of like a wooded, enclosed area where I and my tent will be inconspicuous. Having found what looks like a likely location, and on the way to the location, I'll also be scanning the local area to see if there's any signs that this place is used as like a hangout in the evening by kids or something. So if all's well and there's no signs of the area being recently used, then I'll stop and I'll wait and I'll listen for a little while. Having assured myself that the area seems pretty quiet, I'll do a quick tour around the area just to see if there's any kind of paths that I'd missed which might be frequented, or any other signs that I might have missed that the area might be used on a frequent basis. For instance, just up there is actually a pretty substantial path. It's actually got a marker on it, it's so well used. But having looked at it and having walked it and looked down into where I was planning to camp, I felt reasonably confident that no one could really see where I was at, and the noise I was going to make wasn't sufficient that you could actually hear it up there. But the point is that I checked and I wasn't going to be surprised. Point 4, have a cover story. This is a bit weird, but what I've found is coming into the woods and scouting around for a place to hang out, and I've got a big backpack on and things like that, I feel like a bit of a prat. And I feel like when I'm just hanging out in the bushes, if someone were to see me, then they're going to think I'm really weird. And for some reason that kind of makes me feel awkward about doing this thing. And in fact is one of those things which can prevent me from actually going out and doing wild camping. So one of the things that I do to help myself with that is to get my camera out quite quickly. And if someone comes along, I can always just pretend to be fiddling with my camera, lining it up on what I could reasonably pass off as being like some kind of deer track, and just saying that I'm going to be hanging around here for a little while into the evening in order to get some footage, hopefully, of some deer or something along those lines. It just needs to be plausible enough that people will put you into that comfortable nature enthusiast pigeonhole rather than weird bloke in the woods. That might be a bit weird. I don't know if it's just me, but I do feel a bit awkward about stealth camping and the risk of being caught and what it's actually like to have people come quite close and I'm pretty sure see me like hanging out in a camp. So it's nice to have some kind of context to put myself in their minds. Tip number 5 is just enjoy yourself. Now this is a bit obvious and I feel like any kind of list along these lines probably ends with this kind of tip, but it's actually really important. There's nothing you have to do when you're wild camping. You don't have to come into the woods and then immediately build yourself a fire because you feel like you ought to have a fire. You don't need to start stripping logs and building yourself a habitat or a bench or something along those lines, doing bushcraft or whatever. You literally can just sit in your tent and read your book and enjoy the experience of the noise of nature around you and the feeling of fresh air and the smell. The smell of the woods is amazing. There's no expectation on you to do anything other than just kick back and do what it is that you need to do in order to best enjoy your experience and get the most out of it for yourself. So those are my tips for you. I hope you found something useful here. I think for the most part it's just common sense, but these are things that have really stood out in my mind when I've been doing these wild camps. So thanks so much for watching YouTube. Like, share and subscribe if you found this in any way entertaining, and I'll see you on the next video. Quick tour of the camp. This is the Helm 2, purchased because I wanted a bit more space than I was getting in my snug pack. It's a really nice tent. First time I've used it in anger. I carried it to the top of a Romanian mountain, but didn't use it in the end. But I'm really impressed with it. It's got just enough space to be really comfortable for one person. I don't think I'd use it for 2 people. But it's really nice, and having 2 doorways, 2 windows is great. This is the actual location itself. There's a clearing over that way somewhere, but I haven't seen anyone. Up this way, excuse me, is a path. And you could, if you were looking, see the tent from up there, but you'd really have to be searching, so I figured that it wasn't really a risk. Otherwise, it's just me and some bushes. Which kind of, when you express it like that, sounds a bit weird, but hey ho. But it's nice. It's around 8 o'clock in the morning at the moment. Haven't heard anyone apart from in the very far distance. For the most part, it's just been me and birds and squirrels, which seem to have fun playing down that way. In terms of the tent itself, it's fairly roomy, enough that I can get my bag, my sleeping bag, camera gear, all that kind of stuff in there. And you've got some decent head height as well, so it's very easy to sit up and just be comfortable. That's where I made some breakfast. And now we've got some light dimpling through the trees.